I just want to take this time out to thank God because I've been blessed, truly blessed. I started out in 1956. I worked a half a quarter of a game in 1956, the Jack Yates Thanksgiving game between Jack Yates and Wheatley. Then in 1957, I worked the whole game, all 4 quarters, and I worked around great coaches. They didn't have but 3 coaches. You had Booker T. Washington with Coach Tankersley, and you had Phyllis Wheatley with Coach Frank Walker, and Jack Yates with Coach Pat Patterson. Working around all 3 of those guys, man, I learned a lot. And then that later on in 1958, they opened up 2 new schools, which I had already been familiar with Coach Tankersley, but he moved out to Worthing. And then they had a brand new coach out of Cashmere, which was called Coach Billy Matthews. And then they had a new coach over at Booker T. Washington, which was Coach Sims. So those were the original black high schools and their coaches. And so happened my cousin, Dr. John Harvey, he was a trainer for the Oilers. And so happened in 1960, when he got ready to graduate, to go to college, he asked me did I want to take a job working for a new professional football team that was coming to Houston, which it wasn't a National Football League. It was something they called American Football League. And he said I can make $5 a game. On the high school games, I was making 50 cents a game holding the yardsticks. And my cousin asked me, because he couldn't take the job because he was going to college to Wiley. And he introduced me to the Houston Oilers, and the Oilers was just coming to town. Mr. Bud Adams is the first somebody who brought professional sports to this town. People do not know that. Yes, it was Mr. Bud Adams with the Houston Oilers. The Houston Bucks was here, but that was a semi-pro minor league baseball team. Mr. Adams was the first somebody that brought sports to this city of Houston, Texas. And in the American Football League, they had a rule that the home team was supposed to furnish the visiting team with a water boy. So I was the water boy because my cousin couldn't take the job. And it paid me $5 a game. The trainer for the Houston Oilers at that time was Mr. Bobby Brown. And the Oilers was just coming to town. In fact, that was the year they won their first and last championship game here in Houston at Jefferson Stadium. That's where they played all their games. And the first coach was Coach Lou Rinkers. And it was so funny because George Blanda, everybody used to call him Mr. Blanda. And they had a Heisman Trophy winner. He just came out of LSU, was Billy Cannon. And let me tell you the name of the American Football League teams that I worked for. It was a total of 7. I worked for 6. First of all, you had the Dallas Texans. That's why I'm supporting the Kansas City Chiefs right now, because of Mr. Hunt, who is the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. You had the Dallas Texans, because Mr. Hunt started the league. Then he got Mr. Adams to come in with him, which was the Houston Oilers. And then he had a man up there in Buffalo called Mr. Wilson, which was called the Buffalo Bills. And then you had another team where some of these owners didn't make it. It wasn't but 3 owners that made it. 4 counting Al Davis. Okay, you had Mr. Hunt, Mr. Adams, and Mr. Wilson. That's Houston, Dallas. They were the Dallas Texans. They hadn't moved to Kansas City yet. And then the owner for the New York Titans, he couldn't hang. His money ran out. Then he had to sell it to another man who later moved the team to New Jersey and became the New York Jets. And then you had the Boston Patriots. They had to move out of Boston and move to New England with Mr. Gillette bought the team. That's why you got a Gillette Stadium now in New England. Then you had the Los Angeles Chargers, who eventually moved out to San Diego. Then you had the Oakland Raiders, the Denver Broncos, and those was the 7 teams that they had in the American Football League. And later on, in working with those coaches, some of the best coaches man, I've been blessed to be around these good coaches. Mr. Sid Gilman, he was over the Los Angeles Chargers. He was what you call a Bill Belichick today. He was highly respected because he was a winning coach. Even people like Chuck Noll, who used to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers, he worked under Sid Gilman. Sid Gilman, he reminded me of the Coach Patterson. He was a nonsense type guy. He barely seldom laughed and smiled. But the guy who I admired the most, he would remind me of John Tankersley daddy. His name was Hank Stram. And Hank Stram, he was, he would play with Lynn Dawson. He would play with Abner Haynes. All these guys, it was a blessing to be around these people. So I always felt like I was part of the American Football League. And when they decided to have, because the league came into existence in 1960. So they stayed around 4 years. And the 5th year, they decided to say, hey, because the American Football League, the commissioner was Al Davis. The Oakland Raiders was owned by Al Davis's mother. He was the commissioner. So when Mr. Davis and Pete Rozelle made a statement that they would, I'm going to high school, but I'm listening to this because I'm part of this. I felt like I was part of it. I watched them grow. I watched them how they merged into the NFL. Man, this is a blessing, man. Ain't too many people can tell you this. And they told me when I got the job, did I know somebody? So I knew a person named Curtis Boyd, and Curtis Boyd helped me out. I didn't do all that by myself because I'm going to tell you how it started. On Friday, the team flies in, the visiting team. So Saturday morning, all their jerseys that they practice in will be dirty. So at Jefferson Stadium, they had in the middle was a bunch of washing machines and dryers. And me and Curtis would wash all of those practice jerseys, all of the jockey straps, and the socks. And all of them had their number, just like this number here is 27. He would have a 27 jersey. You would have a pair. His socks would be marked 27. His shoes would be marked 27. His shoulder pads, his knee pads, everything he owned and he put on would have his number. That was his identification. And we'll start that Saturday. Saturday morning, we wash all the jerseys, all the T-shirts, and put it in a big duffel bag. But to make sure, so after the game Sunday, we would load it up so they would take it back to their home with them. And they didn't have but one airport, and that was Hobby Airport. And Hobby Airport, like you know, is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Jefferson Stadium. And we would practice. Me and Curtis would put the jerseys and put all that stuff in a duffel bag. And all their game jerseys like this, they would come from the cleaners. And that would be the last thing that we would put out. And then we would put out the jerseys, and then on top of the jerseys, quite naturally, we put up the helmets on top of the jerseys. And the rest of the stuff would be under the bench. And that's how we would start our day. And then Sunday morning, we'll get there around about 11 o'clock. And whoever was the trainer, whoever was in town, because we worked for the opposite team. We didn't work for the Houston Oilers. We worked for the team, the opposite team the Oilers played, because it was the Oilers who had to furnish the opposite team, the visiting team, a water boy. And that's how me and Curtis got started when we got paid $5 a game. And they had 6 games, so that's $30 a season. $5 times 6 games, that's $30. And that's how me and Curtis wound up going and working for the opposite team the Oilers played for. And it was and I learned so much from these people. Especially one time when everybody used to call George Blanda Mr. Blanda. Even the Heisman Trophy winner, Billy Cannon, called him Mr. Blanda. Charlie Toller called him Mr. Blanda. Charlie Hennigan called him Mr. Blanda. Mike Hike, the man who owned Mike Hike Chevrolet, he used to be a defensive back for the Houston Oilers. He called him Mr. Blanda. Even sometimes Mr. Rinkers would call him Mr. Blanda. And Mr. Blanda was the man. And one time, I never forget this, he called a play for Mr. Blanda to run, Mr. Rinkers. And Mr. Blanda went over there and shot the bird in Mr. Rinkers' face. You got to remember, I'm 12 years old. I don't understand this. How can a man shoot you the bird and 5, 10 seconds later you run out there hugging and kissing him? So I didn't understand it. So I asked the trainer, I say, didn't Mr. Blender shoot Mr. Wrinkles the bird? Because we were real, I respected all them guys. I didn't call Abner Haynes, I called him Mr. Haynes. I didn't call Lynn Dawson, Mr. Dawson, I called him Mr. Dawson. Because I respected them people, they was adults. I didn't call Paul Lowe. I didn't call Jack Kemp. It was Mr. Kemp, Mr. Lowe. Just like I respected the coach, Mr. Gilman, and Mr. Hank Stram. And I didn't understand, how can you flip the bird to somebody and 30 seconds later, they running over there hugging and kissing on you. So the guy told me, the trainer who I worked for at the Los Angeles Chargers, that's who they were playing. He said, son, don't you ever forget this as long as you live. And I said, yes, sir. He said, as long as you winning, don't nobody care what you do. And that is right today, and I never forgot it. As long as you making money, as long as you doing the right thing, everybody's on your side. When you lose, you lose. But when you win, it's we win. And just at the time I was in high school when I heard that Mr. Davis, who was the commissioner of the American Football League, and Mr. Pete Rozelle in 1965 had already scheduled in 1964 a game to be played. And they didn't know the name of the game other than the World Championship game. And they said that wouldn't work because all games ended with a bowl. From Rose Bowl to Sugar Bowl to Cotton Bowl, everything was a bowl. So they said that since this is the biggest bowl of them all, and this is where all the god doggone money, these people are playing for money, they ain't colleges now. So therefore we should name it the Super Bowl. And to knowing that when they played the Kansas City Chiefs, which was the first team to get in to the first Super Bowl, they lost to Vince Lombardi. That's why they got a Vince Lombardi trophy today for the Super Bowl, because Vince Lombardi saved the NFL from getting embarrassed. And the first 2 years, Green Bay Packers, which was coached by Vince Lombardi, won the championship. Third year, the New York Titans, which had already moved out to the New York Jets, so this man had plenty of money. He got Joe Namath from Alabama, so they won the American Football League Conference, and therefore, and the coach for the New York Jets was Hugh Rebanks, who they played the Baltimore coach, and Hugh Banks used to be the coach for the Baltimore coach. Hugh Banks was the coach for Johnny Unitas. Hugh Banks was the coach for Don Shula. So when they played the Baltimore Colts, they knew what to expect. That's why Joe Namath was bragging, because he knew that them guys could not beat him. And that was in Super Bowl III. And that's when the New York Jets beat the Baltimore Colts. And then in Super Bowl IV, that's why you see me with this Kansas City jersey on, because I recognize Mr. Hunt, and I recognize the Kansas City Chiefs that used to be the Dallas Texans. And that's when Otis Taylor, a Houston boy out of 3rd Ward in the CUNY home, should have won the most valuable player that year, but at the time, America was not ready for blacks to be a most valuable player, especially in a big game called the Super Bowl game, because now they changed it to the Super Bowl. And Otis Taylor, Lynn Dawson, all of those guys won Super Bowl IV. And then that following year, Mr. Pete Rozelle, along with the other NFL teams, decided to merge together. And when they merged the American Football League together, they couldn't have but one league, so they changed all American Football League teams, came American Football Conference. And all the NFL teams became the NFC Conference. So I just want to say, I thank God, man, because sometimes people say, Bully, you lying. But hey, the proof is in the pudding. The facts are there. I've been blessed. No matter what people do to try to hurt me or try to discredit me, God has been truly good to me. So thank y'all very much. I hope y'all got something.